Hey guys, I'm WUSA. It is Saturday, and this is season 4, episode 148. And this is the first edition of Coach's Corner. Coach is a friend of mine. He's an advantage player, very nice guy. And I visited him in Oklahoma last year, I believe. And all around good guy. I like his story. I like what he does. He's a total grinder, and he will go from place to place to place to place to place and make 50 here, 20 here, 100 there, 200 there, and put together some big numbers. And he's a very impressive guy. And I thought it would be good for him to start doing some episodes and kind of update you on what's going on in his life so you can get a different perspective from him. So this is Coach's Corner. And if you have any questions or comments, my email is mwusa21 at gmail.com. mwusa21 at gmail.com. Here's Coach.
Good evening. This is Coach, MWUSA's friend, and this is my first of hopefully several podcasts. Before I really get started, I want to give a shout out to MWUSA for allowing me to be a part of his fantastic podcast. I'm humbled by his invite. I'm humbled to be a part of it. In fact, his podcast is the only podcast I've ever listened to every episode of. So my goal with this podcast is definitely not to take over his podcast or anything. It's just to take us maybe a small part of it. Maybe you would say a corner of as many rooms of his house that's built his podcast. So I thought it'd be a good name for my podcast would be the Coach's Corner. This first podcast, I'm just going to take a little time to tell a little bit about myself. When I was became a sophomore in high school, I moved in with my grandparents after my mom had passed away. I had an uncle that actually graduated college with me, so I lived with my uncle, and I had another uncle that was 2 years ahead of me. So my grandfather was also a Methodist minister, so there wasn't obviously a whole lot of gambling in the household, but we did play a lot of board games, and we played a lot of Monopoly. We played Risk and other games. And early on, I tried to develop strategies to win the most times at Monopoly. And one of my strategies was to try to obtain the orange and purple properties. And there was a couple reasons to do that. One was they were relatively cheap as far as buying houses, so you could develop rather quickly. And the second thing is people went to jail. And once you went out of jail, you had to go down through the purple and orange properties. So the probability of hitting those properties, in my mind, was more than other areas of the board. If I had the difference between the two, I'd always, of course, want to hit the orange properties, New York Avenue, and those properties, because you had to, if you rolled a 6, 8, or 9 coming out of jail, then you were going to land on one of my properties and have to pay me. Uh, I developed these theories mainly because I was competitive, and I guess I was developing, theories before I even knew what gaming theory was, or if even gaming theory existed back then. In Risk, one of my strategies was to hold up in Central America because there's only two entry points, or more favorably hold up in Australia, try to build up and then wreak havoc upon the world later on. Later on, I went to college. In college, my junior year, I actually got involved in my first professional type gambling or gambling establishment. And one of my best friends that was on the cross country and track team with me in college, we started periodically on the weekends going to the horse races in Hot Springs, Arkansas, at Oaklawn with his mom and dad. I remember when we went, I would take $20 in. If we got there on time, there would usually be 9 or 10 races on the docket, and I would bet $2 a race. And hopefully, I could walk out the end of the day with just a little bit of money in my pocket. If things were tough, I always bet like very conservatively. If I won a couple races early, then I could get a little crazy and maybe bet a 1 horse across the board, two across the board, bet $6 in one race. Uh, Again, I was limited on funds being at college, so that's kind of my early examples of working with bankroll management, which I didn't even know what a bankroll was back then. I graduated from college in 1985 and started my career as a teacher and coach, thus the nickname Coach. I continued probably other than periodically maybe betting on a game or something with a friend. Uh, my gambling career consisted of periodically going to the horse races for several years. That changed in 1990 when the Cherokee casinos, or actually the Cherokee tribe at the point, opened up the Mingo Outpost in Roland, Oklahoma, which was near Fort Smith. Uh, I started. I remember the first night I started what I thought would be my bingo career. I went down to play bingo, and there's probably a crowd of 500 or 600. And in a crowd of 500 or 600, I bingo twice and won $300 in each. I won $600 the first time I went to bingo. I was driving home thinking maybe I can just give up my teaching and coaching job and become a professional bingo player. Quickly, I learned that the laws of averages were, I was on the very high end of variance in the law of averages, is that you're going to be a losing player when you play bingo. My first trip into a casino was actually in Las Vegas. My former wife or ex wife booked a junket, which was basically the plane, the casino, and everything together. And we spent 4 days at the Stardust Casino in Las Vegas. A couple of things I remember about that trip. One was I think I ventured down to what was the Casino Royale then and now, and they had $1 blackjack at the time. So I wanted to play cheapest blackjack as I could find. I remember at one point the dealer had a 10 showing. I had a pair of 10s and I went to split them and everybody just went crazy. And I said, well, what's wrong? And I see people splitting other cards. And they said, you don't split 10s against a 10. And I recall my ex wife telling me that she was playing, I believe, Let It Ride over another table. And the pit boss told her, we don't have to worry about him counting cards. And I remember a couple other things too. I remember enjoying the Big Six wheel, unbeknownst to me that was one of probably the worst bets in the casino. And I spent a lot of time at it. But I had a great time. I was sold on it. I didn't have a clue what I was doing, and I know I lost money, but I still enjoyed it, and I was kind of hooked at that point. The After that point, a little bit before that, or just right after that, the Cherokee opened up a bingo outpost in Silent Springs, which was about an hour from where I was coaching. One of the funniest stories about this place was shortly after it opened, a couple of my students who were seniors wanted to go play bingo with me. Of course, back then it wasn't no issue. Nowadays, you probably have all kinds of ethics violations going on, and maybe get fired as a teacher if you did it nowadays. But we went. Stuart was 18, and Jason, who went with me, he was 17 at the time. And we went to get in, and Stuart got up there, and they said, "Can we see your ID, sir?" And Jason goes, "Oh, uh, SHIT." He says, "Oh crap!" And so he figured he was not going to be able to play bingo. Well, Stewart, they showed his ID. He's 18. He's good. And Jason held his ID out, and the guy said, "No, sir, you're okay." And Jason was one of those kind of students that when he was a senior, he looked like he was 21, so he got to go in. So Jason played illegal bingo twice. Uh, after a couple weeks after he went to bingo, he turned 18, and for his first trip officially as a legal bingo player, we actually met him and his parent, and we met his parents over there at bingo when we was playing across the table from his parents. Well, bingo gives you these little things called bonanza cards, and it's a single sheet card, and you daub either the odd or even numbers depending upon what day of the week whether it's odd or even day. Well, he had a card that, and if your card wasn't any good, you could trade it in for $1 and get two more cards. Well, he had a card that needed only three more numbers. He needed, it was an even day. I remember he needed three odd numbers, and I remember the last one, or one of them being I-40 or G49. And so I teased him, said, "I guess you're not going to trade that in." He goes, "No." And so first number came out. It was a number he needed. Next number came out. It was a number he needed. Third number came out was G49. And he bingoed in I think it was 47 numbers or less. He easily bingoed in the 47 numbers or less. And when he did, just the crowd went crazy. But 3 days after turning the age of 18, Jason won $21,700 on the Bonanza bingo. We had a working deal where we split wins and losses. 80% went to the person who won, and 20% went to the loser. And so, a couple of days later, after he put his money, his check in the bank, and it cleared, he wrote me a check for 20% of that minus 28% for taxes. So that was quite an enjoyable time as far as bingo for him. And he did a good job, even though at his age, he did a good job of investing it and didn't really squander it away. So after that, uh, this in 1998, the school I'd been coaching at, I made a decision. I was a cross country coach, and the team had won 10 consecutive state championships on the boys' side. Well, that year the streak was broken, and I decided we finished runner up at state meet, and I had decided before I even got to the finish line, I was going to go to a different school. I was frustrated with some of the things going on at this current school, and so I had made a decision, and the state meet was in early November, so I made a decision that I was going to go somewhere else and started looking. What I also did at that point was I started missing every Wednesday. So this was maybe a prerequisite to the early days of NWUSA missing work every now and then, maybe. But I would just tell the secretary I'm going to be on Wednesday. And what I did on Wednesdays, I would go over to the bingo outpost in Catoosa, Oklahoma, and they had 2 for 1 pack days. And so I felt like I'd become skilled enough where I could play 2 packs efficiently. A lot of people who did the 2 1 packs were husband and wives who split the packs, so I felt like I'd have an advantage. So even at that point, I didn't know a lot what I was doing, but I always looked for advantages as far as competing against other things and trying to have a leg up on things. When I made the move to my new school was actually just a few miles away from the bingo outpost in West Silent Springs. So people said, "You're going to be in trouble." Of course, you can probably tell what town that was if it was just a few miles away from West Silent Springs in Arkansas. And I thought, well, I've got to control. I can't go to the bingo outpost all the time. Well, all of a sudden, what happened that year was they added electronics to their bingo packs. They used to be paper only, and I felt like paper only, I could play more faces than a lot of people, and I had an advantage. But when electronic packs came on, people could buy them for 64 faces and the advantage was gone. Also, the fact was that it would cost a lot more to play if you bought the electronics, and they were still paying out the same $300 basically for a base game. So at that point, I basically quit playing bingo over there. I did go up to Seneca in West, technically Oklahoma, but next to Missouri, and they did have paper only packs there, so I played a little bit there at that time too. Also, at that point, Jason was in college. Actually, Jason was out of college, and we became a lifelong friends, even though he's one of my former students. But we started going periodically to the casinos up in Kansas City. Uh, we would take a few casino trips to Tunica. I remember our very first trip to Tunica. We drove into the town of Tunica, and we saw a sign that said Riverboat Casinos. Excuse me. We drove out to the river. And there was this old dilapidated steamboat, and we said, "Well, I think casino." It may be a little bit of foreshadowing of Tunica because Tunica is not what it used to be. But I said, I don't think the casino business is doing too good. So we went back in Tunica and actually got directions and found out that the Tunica casinos were in Robinsonville, a little bit north of us. Also, around that time, the school I was working at, around 2001, I started playing with some friends in a home game. It was a dealer's choice game. It was $1 limit until I believe 9 or 10 o'clock at night. Then you could play. You could bet $2. You could bet one or two. You couldn't check raise. It was very limited on strategy wise, but it was a good game to learn. And we played a lot of variants of games. So I bought a couple of books and started studying those games and trying to figure out to be a little bit better poker player. I also had, in the meantime, while Jason and I had started going to casinos in Kansas City, I bought, I think it was Thorpe's book on blackjack, but I learned basic strategy. I learned what to do. I learned a little bit about counting cards because I just didn't want to go to the casino and donate money all the time. I still was not a winning player between all those things. And one of the things that turned around for me was I had a friend Janet who I coached with, and we were at the casino. She loved going to casinos too, and I was telling her how I don't know what I'm winning, I don't know why I'm winning or why I'm losing. She goes, "Well, why don't you start keeping a spreadsheet?" So in 2002, I started keeping a spreadsheet, and I've kept my stats ever since then to know where at what position I am at as far as winning or losing. In 2004, the Oklahoma Gaming Act passed, and Oklahoma could start Class 3 gaming machines. This started changing things for me because casino gambling became easier to get to as far as things go. Uh, Initially, there's they brought in some slot machines. They brought in electronic bingo. I remember one thing about I went played my very first game of electronic bingo. I bingo like in eight numbers and won $600. I didn't even realize I'd won that much, and until it down, I go, wow. But anyways, they started Class Three games, and a couple years later, they started evolving into regular casino games. In 2005, I moved to Central Arkansas to get to administration, and I found a home game there. That home game was strictly 1-2 no limit hold'em. I was very inefficient at it at first, and I remember I bought Phil Hellmuth's book, Play Poker Like the Pros, and I studied it, and my game just instantly turned. I mean, I became a winning player. Sometimes I had to tamper down the winning to make sure I got invited back to the game. It was a crazy game. I mean, it was sometimes we'd have 6, 7 people, and sometimes we'd have 15 to 20 people. They'd be dealing almost all the cards, and maybe not even be able to burn for the turn and river on the 5 community cards. But it was an enjoyable game. I enjoyed the camaraderie of that. So when I started going to casino, when I continued to go to casinos during that time period, I actually started playing a lot more poker than anything else. So I felt like, later on in the years when I retired, that poker would be my game. Uh, I became a winning poker player, and I was very proficient at poker during that time period. In 2010, I went through a divorce, and I moved to Western Arkansas. I remarried in 2012 with my wife, who's my current wife. Uh, Unbeknownst to her, her parents loved going to casino, but she never told her daughter about it. Once she found out that I was not against going to casinos, we started going to casinos with them. I remember one of the first things I told my wife is, "Do not touch the slots. They you cannot win at them." So I taught her how to play video poker. We practiced on videopoker.com, and she became very good at playing video poker. And so, I was not a slot player at the point. I would play some video poker to get a few points, to get a few comps, and then I was mainly a poker player when we went there. 2016, I was kind of messing around at the casino waiting for a poker, to get on the poker table on the wait list. And I noticed there was some of these progressives, and NW says we can't give the names of these of machines. You could almost give the name of this machine. It doesn't exist much anymore. I know there's a couple of these games in Tunica. I actually found one in Reno last week. But basically, the games had a must hit by progressive at 300, and then the bottom progressives at 40. I started messing with these games, and I realized I was making some money on these. If I entered at 269 or better, I almost always made money on the bottom one on the $40 progressive. If I entered around 35, 36, I usually made money on there. I remember the meter going up quite quickly, uh, more quickly than a lot of progressives. So I actually started playing slots a little bit 2016. I would mainly look at must hit by progressives. Uh, I was in 2019. I was on a forum, and there's this guy named Joey that we started corresponding back and forth mainly about poker. He lives in Dallas and stuff. But in 2019, he sent me a link to how to play some advantage games, and I started looking at that, and I started studying that during COVID. Right before the casinos closed, I noticed some of those games that were on there were at our local casino, so I started playing those. And there was a couple other games that were similar that I picked up on things. Well, of course, I was just starting to see, like I was winning just a little bit more here and there at the casinos, and of course, COVID came. The casino shut down, and I did a lot of studying, a lot of preparation. I went back to school in August to in service, and this I just completed 36 years of coaching and teaching, and I looked around, and there's only like 3 people out of 100 in the secondary teachers meeting wearing masks at our district-wide meeting. I just got nervous about going back to work, and I talked to my doctor, and he said, "If you can afford it, go ahead and retire." Uh, I didn't know if I could actually afford it, but made the decision in August of that year to retire. Distance Learning contacted me, wanted me to teach some math, and I did that for about a month, but the professional development was just too much for me to do. So in September, I remember September 20th specifically, I made the decision that I was going to retire. The casinos were just starting to open, and I talked to my wife about it, and I said, "I think I can make this work at the casinos." Uh, I mean, I'll be drawing a pension around 40,000, but I think I can make this work. Maybe I can make about that much and match it up, and I can be making just as much before I retire if she is okay with that. And she was okay with that. So since September of 2020, I've become an advantage play slots player. I still play some video poker, still play some poker. Every now and play blackjack. And so most of my podcasts will be about some of my latest adventures and some of the things I've learned through the last 5 years. So that kind of sums up how I became a advantage player. Uh, Again, I was looking for advantages even in high school before I even knew what advantage play was. I hope y'all have enjoyed getting to know me a little bit, and know what I'm about and what I'm interested in, and I will expand more on what been going on currently with me in my life, and sharing a little bit more of this later on. Until then, hit lots of bonuses, hits lots of progressives, and even hit lots of royal flushes, as Bob Dancer would say. This is Coach. My email is fremontfreebies@gmail.com. That's Fremont with one E, like the Fremont Street in Las Vegas. Free, FREE, and then Bees, BEES. Until then, have a good day and thank you.